In the heart of New York, amidst the bustling streets and towering skyscrapers, I've always found a peculiar sense of isolation. It's ironic, really, how in a city so packed with life, one can feel so utterly alone. I'm Nicky, a 17-year-old high schooler, and this is the story of one Thanksgiving that my family and I will never forget. Our family isn't what you'd call typical. Dad's the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, even if it left him shivering in the cold. Mom, on the other hand, is more practical, always keeping us grounded. Then there's Emma, my little sister, who's in her own world of middle school drama and TikTok dances. Thanksgiving was always a big deal for us. It's that one time of the year when we'd slow down and appreciate what we have. Each other. This year, though, things took an unexpected turn. It started off as any other Thanksgiving day. The aroma of turkey roasting in the oven filled our small apartment, and the chatter of the Macy's parade buzzed from the TV. I was helping Mom with the stuffing, a recipe passed down from Grandma, while Emma was setting the table, meticulously folding each napkin into a perfect triangle. The doorbell rang, punctuating the festive atmosphere with a sense of curiosity. Dad, humming a tune, went to answer it. What I saw next made my heart sink. Standing in the doorway was a man, disheveled and with a weary look that told stories of hard times. Dad, with his ever-present smile, ushered him in, introducing him as John, someone he'd met on his way back from the store. Mom's smile faltered, a rare occurrence, and even Emma stopped her meticulous table setting to stare. John was a homeless man, and Dad, in his typical fashion, had invited him to join our Thanksgiving dinner. There was an air of discomfort that settled over our apartment. John was quiet, almost eerily so. He sat at our table, his eyes scanning the room, never quite settling. His hands were rough and calloused, telling of a life far removed from the sheltered existence I lived. Dinner was served, and as we ate, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. John's presence was like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over our family's warmth. He ate with a voraciousness that was unsettling, his focus solely on the plate in front of him. Occasionally, he'd clutch at his stomach, a grimace flickering across his face. I tried to engage him in conversation, asking about where he was from, but his answers were vague, almost rehearsed. There was something about him that didn't sit right with me. It was more than just the fact that he was a stranger in our home. It was a feeling in my gut, a sense of dread that I couldn't shake off. As the evening wore on, John excused himself, saying he needed to use the bathroom. Time passed and he didn't return. Dad went to check on him, only to find the bathroom empty and the window in our parents' bedroom, which we rarely ever opened, ajar. Panic set in as the realization hit us. John had vanished. The Thanksgiving feast, a time-honored tradition of warmth and gratitude, was unfolding in our small New York apartment. But the atmosphere this year was anything but festive. The addition of John, the homeless man my father had brought home out of compassion, had introduced an undercurrent of tension that was as palpable as the chill of the November air outside. We gathered around the dinner table, the spread of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce looking almost surreal in the context of our current company. Mom tried to keep the conversation light, talking about Emma's school and my upcoming college applications. But it all felt forced, a thin veneer over the unease that gripped us. John sat there, a stark contrast to our family. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, and there was a wildness in his eyes that I couldn't quite fathom. He spoke little, only muttering a brief thank you as he helped himself to the food. His eating habits were disturbing. He devoured his meal with a kind of desperate ferocity, as if it were his first in days. It probably was. I couldn't help but notice his frequent, almost agonized, glances towards his stomach. He would intermittently pause, clutching at his midsection with a grimace of pain or discomfort. There was something deeply unsettling about this gesture, a silent scream of some unseen agony. The silence at the table grew heavier with each passing moment, punctuated only by the clinking of cutlery and the muffled sounds of the parade still playing on the TV in the living room. Emma, usually a chatterbox, was uncharacteristically quiet, her eyes darting nervously between John and the rest of us. As the meal drew to a close, John suddenly stood up, pushing his chair back with a scrape that echoed through the tense air. "Bathroom," he grunted and shuffled away from the table. His abrupt departure was almost a relief, but it did little to dispel the cloud of discomfort that hung over us. We tried to resume normal conversation, but it was futile. The air was thick with unasked questions and what ifs. Minutes turned into an hour, and John didn't return. Dad's expression turned from one of concern to worry. He excused himself to check on John, leaving the rest of us in a state of anxious silence. It wasn't long before Dad returned, his face pale, a mixture of confusion and fear in his eyes. "He's gone," he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. "The bathroom window's open. He must have left through there." The news hit us like a cold wave. The open window in the November chill, the empty bathroom, the mysterious disappearance of this stranger who had briefly entered our lives. It all felt like a scene from a nightmare. But little did we know, the real nightmare had just begun. The evening after John's mysterious disappearance through the bathroom window, our apartment felt like a different world. The festive decorations seemed out of place, and the leftover turkey lay forgotten in the fridge. My parents had tried to brush off the incident, assuring Emma and me that John probably just needed some air. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had settled in my stomach. I went to bed that night, but sleep eluded me. My mind replayed the day's events over and over, each time stopping at John's pained glances towards his stomach. There was something sinister about it, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was past midnight when I heard it, a faint rustling in my room. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw a figure crouched in the corner. My heart stopped. It was John. He looked different, more haggard, if that was even possible. His eyes were wild, darting around the room, and his hands were trembling. He kept muttering to himself, words I couldn't make out at first, but as I strained to listen, I caught snippets, stomach, and can't stop it. I wanted to scream, to run to my parents' room, but I was paralyzed with fear. John's presence was like a suffocating force, filling the room with a sense of impending doom. Suddenly, he stood up, his movements erratic and unsteady. He staggered towards me, his mutterings growing louder. I could see now that his clothes were stained, and there was a smell, a sickly sweet odor that made my stomach churn. Just as he reached my bed, my father burst into the room, alerted by the commotion. What followed was a blur of chaos. My mother's screams, Emma's cries, and my father grappling with John. In the struggle, John's shirt lifted, revealing his stomach. It was grotesque, swollen and discolored, the skin stretched taut over something that seemed to move underneath. It was like nothing I had ever seen, a living nightmare. With a final burst of strength, John pushed my father away and bolted out of the room. We heard the front door slam, and then there was silence. We sat there, a family in shock, trying to process what had just happened. That night changed everything. The terror that had hidden in the shadows of our home had revealed itself, leaving us with scars that went deeper than the physical. The days following that horrifying Thanksgiving night passed in a haze. Our apartment, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a tomb. The police came and went, their questions forming a monotonous backdrop to our shock. They searched for John, but he had vanished into the cold New York night, leaving behind more questions than answers. My father was a shell of his former self. The guilt of having brought John into our home consumed him. He barely spoke, his eyes constantly haunted by what had happened. My mother tried to hold us together, but the strain was evident in her tired eyes and forced smiles. Emma was the most affected. She refused to sleep alone, her nights plagued by nightmares of John and his grotesque, writhing stomach. I, too, couldn't shake off the image. It was etched into my mind, a constant, unbidden reminder of the terror we had experienced. A few weeks later, we received a call from the police. They had found John. He was dead, discovered in an abandoned building, his body ravaged by what was later revealed to be an advanced, untreated stomach cancer. The news brought no relief, only a profound sadness for a life so brutally consumed by illness and neglect. That Thanksgiving marked a turning point in our lives. We had faced a horror that was all too real, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. In the aftermath, I often found myself reflecting on the thin line between compassion and recklessness. My father's kindness, his desire to help a stranger, had led us to a nightmare. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder if ignoring John's plight would have been any better. As I write this, the city outside continues its relentless pace, indifferent to the dramas unfolding within its confines. We've moved on in a way, but the scars remain. They remind us of that Thanksgiving, of the man with the tortured stomach, and of the unpredictable nature of life. This story, my story, is a testament to our resilience and our vulnerability. It's a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear are not just figments of our imagination, but real, flesh and blood, bearing their own unseen horrors.